Hello, welcome to Speech Talk Live, episode number 3. Today's June 12th, 2015. My name is Jay Oza. I am the host of Speech Talk Live, and I have other mentors such as Sowmyan who's going to help me with this show today. Let me just give you a little background for people who are watching this for the first time. We created Speech Talk Live with the sole purpose of learn about public speaking. You know, public speaking is hard. We all know that. And we created this show as a way for people to kind of come together as a community to learn, to teach, to share, and to support. And public speaking takes a long time to master. So we thought that this would be a good way for people who are really interested in sharing their knowledge and also supporting other public speakers to get on this, come to this, participate in this show and learn and teach. So that's the purpose of this. My name is Jay Oza. I'm based out of New Jersey, and I do 3 things. One is that I have a consulting company called Tool Group where I work with startups and small companies and helping them drive sales. The second thing that I work on is I'm currently writing a book that's tentatively titled Win the Job. It's in the rough draft right now, and it takes a lot of time to get it through. It's my first book, so it's really been painful. And the third thing is I really spend a lot of time on this Speech Talk Live. And I would say that most of my evenings, this is what consumes most of my time, trying to see if we can put together a good show where we're learning and also we're also teaching other people so that they get something out of it. And again, we want your feedback because this can only get better based on what you think. So if you have any comments, suggestions, feedback, please send it to me, or better yet, we want you to join and participate. So at this point, I'm going to let Sowmyan and Julie introduce themselves, and then we'll start this first segment. Sowmyan?
Yeah. Hi, folks. I'm Sowmyan. I'm based in Bangalore. I'm one of the mentors in this course. I'm a freelance consultant. I'm a retired professional. I'm 67 years old. My hobby has been to keep doing various Coursera courses, and this course on public speaking is one of the things I liked very much, and I'm very happy to be helping people to learn more about public speaking. I am also a learner. It's not that I have got any accomplishment in terms of public speaking skills. Perhaps I have started about 6 months ahead of you, and that's all that there is that I could claim. Today's topic is about giving feedback. So the feedback is,
Sowmyan, can I just stop you for a second? Let Julie do the introduction, and then we'll come back to introduce the segment, okay? Yeah, sorry to interrupt there. Julie, do you want to introduce yourself, and then I will introduce the first segment, and then turn it over to Sowmyan, okay?
Hi, Jay. Hi, Sowmyan. Good to see you both. Thank you so much. My name is Julie. I am in the middle of a huge move from the Midwest to the East Coast, and I'm pretty uprooted today, but I'm grateful to be here. And I am a student at Coursera, and my interest is in working in collaboration with the global community, and I have a personal interest in sharing my meditation practices, and so many of my speeches you will hear about how wonderful it is to meditate, both for individuals and for organizations. And with that, I turn it over back to Jay. Thanks, Jay.
All right, Julie, thank you. I hope your move is over soon, and you can spend more time doing things that you enjoy. So let me just kind of tell you how this show is. So the show is split up into 3 segments. The first segment, Sowmyan is going to facilitate that, and the topic that typically we select for the first segment are issues or things that we're observing on the Coursera discussion forum, or things we think that people are having problems with and we want to provide some input and help them think about it. And the topic for that is, first one segment is how to give feedback. Feedback's very important. The second segment is going to be, we typically use the second segment to evaluate a member's speech. And today we're going to evaluate a technical speech that was recorded by Lathesh Balakrishna, and I have provided links. So we're going to kind of use his speech, not necessarily to critique his speech, but use it as a way to help others who are in a similar situation where they're going to be giving a technical presentation. Hopefully next week Lathesh can join us and give us a feedback, because I believe he had to present today in front of many of his leadership team. So we'll get a pretty good indication on how it went. And that's the kind of thing we want to do. And the third segment, we take a professional speech and see what we can learn from it, see what they did well, how they presented the topic, how they use the body language, all of this stuff. And these are pros, essentially. These are people who give speeches. They get paid to give speeches. People want to hear them. And today we're going to review John Cleese, actor, comedian from Great Britain. You all probably have heard of him and seen his movies. And we're going to review his speech on creativity. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Sowmyan, who's going to facilitate the first segment, how to give feedback. Sowmyan, take it over.
Thank you, Jay. Hi, folks. Today's first discussion is going to be on providing feedback. You know, initially when we discussed this topic, I had the rubric-based evaluation that we do for the speech as my main point of view, and Jay has been also sharing with us some of the ideas that he had. He has been looking at extending this speech-related thing to other contexts, in organizational context, etc., where performance-related feedback, etc., also becomes one of the major feedback-related topics. Okay, so that is also a speaking situation where you have to use appropriate words. You need to have a structure for it, and so on and so forth. So as I was preparing for this speech, I found that there are a lot of similarities between the way we will provide a feedback for a speech, or the way we will provide for a speech. Feedback for organizational context. Both seem to have many common concepts. See, we, some of you who are engineers will perhaps would have heard of this feedback control systems in engineering, where we always use a error signal to provide a feedback, and that is the one based on which the feedback control system works and tries to achieve the target faster and remain in control. Okay. Machines perhaps are happy to do that kind of thing, but then humans really typically don't feel so comfortable with negative feedback. Yeah, error signal kind of thing is not so palatable to them. See, humans have ego, and ego is fragile, and if that gets hurt, the whole feedback process itself can be counterproductive. They may not even receive the feedback; they may reject it outright. Okay. See, one of the things that we have discussed in the past weeks has been, apprehension, fear of speaking. One of the major sources of this apprehension is this feedback. Even though people, participate in, assignment and things like that, many people don't come forward to participate in any live feedback sessions. There is always this fear of feedback. Okay, so if someone is not practicing a proper feedback session, feedback process, then they may increase the apprehension on the part of the speakers and hence make it counterproductive. So that is another reason why we want to focus on feedback as an important skill. Jay has been fond of saying one thing: if something ends up with a proper impact, if whatever is the impact we targeted at the time of beginning our speech, if that has been achieved, by and large, the speech has been successful. We don't have to perhaps use too many points in a rubric to go and evaluate. All is well that ends well. If the objective has been met, it was a good speech. So that would be one very, very simple way of trying to, condense all the aspects into it. But still, we would like to look at some other finer points, because it is not enough for us to to rate somebody as a good speaker. You must help a good speaker to become an excellent speaker. So that's the idea. So from that point of view, you must give more feedback. So this is the thought I have. Jay, what do you think of this?
Yeah, no, no, that is true. Like, but what you mentioned before, yeah, I think the reason I said that the objective is very important because a lot of times feedback is a very tricky subject. I don't know whether you had a chance to view that Harvard Business Review link that I've sent about these authors who have written a book on feedback. And what she says is that in one sense, we want feedback because we all want to learn and grow. But at the second thing is that we also want to be accepted and respected the way we are. And there is the conflict that takes place. So the reason when I say that you have to look at the person you're giving feedback to. If you don't know the person, then you want to stick to the main topic, which is, did the person meet the objective, and just leave it at that. But anyway, that's my thinking. I agree with what you're saying, that you want to go much deeper, but I think before you go deeper, I think it's important, whether you agree or not, that let the person directly ask you first, because sometimes if you tell them something, they may not receive it well. So I agree that if I'm receptive, for example, if I'm receptive to getting a comprehensive feedback from you, then let me ask you that. Say, Sowmyan, what do you think of my body language? Sowmyan, what did you think of my message? Did that come? Because there are a lot of different aspects of that. That's what I was meaning by that. So I'm not saying that you don't want to give a lot of feedback, but let me drive that, because otherwise I may not receive it well. Julie, do you have any?
Okay. Thank you, Jay. Thank you. I mean, Julie, any reflections you want to share?
Yes, as you know, as you both know, giving feedback process is one of my passions again, and I actually wrote an extended input into the Coursera feedback process, because Coursera is looking at that whole peer review, and I think I'm going to speak to why feedback is so important to both the receiver and the giver. I think when the receiver receives feedback, I agree with Sowmyan absolutely that that is a vehicle to succeed, to improve, and from the giver point of view, I think one of the key elements for success in leadership is how to provide constructive and pertinent information so the receiver can improve. As such, leadership skills is very important in any role, in both in personal life and in organization. It's a key management skill. So to give proper feedback, one has to have the analytical ability to see what is important, and then to be able to deliver in a way that the speaker can receive it is excellent leadership skills in understanding human psyche, the empathy, and the motivations of the speaker, and the context that the speaker, the social context that the speaker is giving to. So I know that Coursera is working on improving the peer review process, and I invite everybody to speak up on what they think is a great peer review process, which is implicit part of the feedback mechanism in our courses. Thanks, Sowmyan.
Thank you, Julie. Well, I mean, as Jay was pointing out in his remarks, he was also pointing to this video that he has provided a link for. You know, in that video, there is a discussion on the feedback process being a pull process rather than a push process. Suppose I have a feedback to give on somebody else, and then I push the feedback. It may not get received, it may not get taken. So the current thinking apparently is that the feedback should be a pull process, where the person who is in need of a feedback goes and requests for feedback from various people and takes it, pulls it. So that's apparently the current thinking. However, this talk or this discussion is still based on the push process as it is. The pull process actually depends on the every individual. I mean, when we review that last video, we will perhaps have opportunity to discuss the pull process. But right now, we will continue on the push process itself. You know, having seen the issues and importance of the, the providing the feedback, we now understand that it is a very sensitive thing. We have to be very careful about giving feedback. We should not, turn off the person who is seeking the feedback, etc. And so we need to see what are the other points we need to look at. I have just put together something like seven or 8 points. Now let me just run through them and throw it open for discussion again. Since negative feedback is not going to be palatable, we have to sandwich it between positive feedbacks. So that's one approach. We can start with observing the positive points of the speaker. Then we can say all these other negative points that we want to talk about. Then we should follow it once again with some positiveness. So the third time when we talk about, the third layer that you are talking about could be a positive outlook, what we are looking for positively. So you end it with a positive note. So that's an important point. Second, it's important that we don't overwhelm the person who is trying to receive the feedback, with some 10 or 12 points. That may be too much. The person will get simply overloaded. He may not know which way to go. In fact, in the last video that we are going to look at, there is also one point where, there is a suggestion that the feedback receiver should go and approach each one of the persons who can possibly give a feedback and say, can you give me one single most important point on which I need to improve? So you keep asking for one single point. So that's the way the feedback is gathered from multiple people. So we are not trying to, ask for 10 or 12 points from the same individual. If you provide feedback, if 4 or 5 of us provide feedback, if more than 2 or 3 have repeated a certain point, then automatically that point gets reinforced. If the point we made is not repeated by others, it's going to get moderated. So we should not give a very long list. We should just observe the 2 or 3 most important points that we want the feedback receiver to keep in mind. So we should make it simple. Third, we need to make the feedback actionable. Unless the person understands what is the feedback, and unless we impart the clarity for that, how is he going to work on it? How is he going to work on improving that? So we need to provide actionable feedback. If I say, somehow I was uncomfortable, somehow your body language didn't seem to match what you were saying, and somehow I didn't, okay, this somehow just doesn't help. You need to be able to say, look, what I observed was you had a fairly long speech. I could not see the transition between the phases that you are looking at. You could have made the transitions a little more clear. Fine. The transition is something we have talked of in the lectures and things like that. So when I am again talking about the same thing, I am making it clear that a transition is something on which, if he provides clarity, it will be well received by me. So that kind of a clarity we should be able to give. The fourth point is words, choice of words. Words and phrases have a very, very great impact. We should not use these words in a very loose sense. We have to measure our words and say, okay. Some people are a little too blunt. I used to be very blunt, very, very blunt. Nowadays, I am trying to couch it in some softer language. But then, some people are downright abrasive in their feedback. They sort of insult the other person. All that kind of thing is not on. We have to use nice phrases, nice words. To describe the same situation, you can choose a set of nice words which will make the message to go home. And you can use some abrasive words which will actually put off the other guy and make him to turn totally against your, what you are saying. So choice of these words becomes very, very important. Yeah, fifth one, I would like to, before I throw it open for a discussion, I want to mention this. I have 5 more points to come later. Comparison. I think parents do this a lot to children. You always compare one child with another child, or one child with a classmate of his, or whatever it is. This kind of comparison is something that rubs in, salt into a wound. That kind of effect comparison has got. I think it is easy to mention these are the areas for improvement, etc., and leave it there. We don't have to really rub it in and say, so look at so and so, he's better than you, all that kind of stuff. More than this, more than comparing with somebody else, comparing the other person with yourself. With a superior air, I am holier than thou. No, that kind of attitude, that is absolutely no. You cannot put up that kind of posture and give a feedback, and it will definitely not be received. These are the first 5 points I wanted to mention. I want to, throw it open for some kind of discussion with my colleagues.
Yeah,
Okay.
Sowmyan, those are excellent points. Yeah, I mean, you've given us a lot there. I completely agree with that. I'll just focus on one, and then I'll let Julie comment on it. I think all these points you made are excellent, but that also brings up another thing, that when you're giving a feedback, it is very important that I think giving feedback is harder than actually giving a speech in some cases, because giving a speech, you seem to have a lot of control on what you want to do. With feedback, it's not it's in fact, it's not only like how you're saying it, but how the other person is going to receive it. So you really need to understand that other person, that, like you mentioned about choice of words, I agree with you completely there, that words can make a big difference. And when people are receiving feedback, they keen on the words, and they may not interpret it right. So you really need to have that interaction back and forth, where you need to calibrate, is that person receiving it the way I intend to? And another thing that I don't know whether you mentioned this or not, that when you're giving a feedback, it's just you got to have an objective too. Like, what is your objective in giving a feedback? And that's also very important. Is your feedback to just get through the feedback? Is your feedback, if you have a common objective, then move forward? So, Julie, do you want to add anything more to it before we turn it back over to Sowmyan to complete his list?
Thanks, Jay. Yes, I just want to underscore what Sowmyan said, that what he calls the sandwich technique is that you need to say something positive and then embed something negative. If I would say constructive rather than negative, and then say something positive again. And in general psychology terms, it's found that it's about a 5-to-1 ratio, that people can take 5 positive feedbacks to get 1 constructive feedback. So with that, I'll turn it back over to whoever. Thank you.
Yeah, Sowmyan, so just to give you a time check, we got 7 more minutes, so let's finish this up in 7. And then I think the next week we can focus on how to receive feedback. So I'm just letting you know that would be the focus for next week.
Sure. When we talked of the positive words, one of the things I remember is we don't say defects, we say opportunities for improvement. So I'm trying to point out these 2 or 3 weaknesses or defects you have. Is perhaps going to be putting up the other person. I can say I have identified some 2 opportunities for improvement. This is a more positive spin. Okay, something like that. Okay. So now I want to move to another kind of list. One is there is a saying that we must give positive feedback in public, where many of his colleagues and friends and others can also hear, whereas we must reserve the negative feedback only to a private session, so that the person who is receiving the feedback doesn't feel embarrassed in any way and can save his face, and there is no awkwardness that we are going to create. So that's important. So in this context, there are many people who post a video in the discussion forum itself and say, can you please provide a feedback? It's going to be very difficult for people to give negative feedback in that area. A constructive feedback that way is going to be difficult. People may just end up appreciating and mentioning only the positive things and leaving it there. That's why we have this mechanism of the feedback being provided in a confidential manner in the assignment evaluation space. So in that space, when you give a feedback, you can make the negative feedback also. The person who is receiving the feedback will not know who has provided it. He has no need to feel embarrassed, and his colleagues also will not come to know about anything that is negative. He can always take it positively towards working on improving of that, but then he's not going to have any embarrassment at all. So that's there in the built-in mechanism we have. The next one is we have also that individuals are all biased. We are all biased. I may have some preferences. I may have some favorable points. I may have some unfavorable points. All these kind of things. This bias is there built into me. So when I give a feedback, this bias of mine comes through in this feedback. So if we have 3 feedbacks, as we have in our evaluation system, peer feedback in Coursera is by 3 to 5 people. When 3 to 5 people provide the feedback, somebody may be mentioning one perspective, another person may be mentioning a different perspective. If among the 5 people some 3 feedbacks are coming as in the same way, they get reinforced. If they are not reinforcing that way, they get moderated. So this is one nice way by which a moderation of the multiple people's feedback will help you to say what is it that you really need to take away. It will ultimately leave with that 1 or 2 points which are a priority. So that's a built-in mechanism. So I would urge people to go and use that forum. Today, I think that forum is sort of broken. People are not going and posting their videos there and providing a feedback, and that's causing a lot of hardship to other people also. Then the other aspect I would like to say is when I'm undergoing any kind of evaluation by somebody, I always like to know what is the norm. What is the norm against which I'm being evaluated or assessed. If I'm providing a goods to some company and that company is going to inspect it before they say it is accepted or rejected. Similarly, when I'm making a speech, I want to know on what basis people will accept it or reject it. If the norms are known to me, I'll be more comfortable. If the norms are not known and it is going to be a surprise to me, I am not at all focused on one dimension, and ultimately the reviewers are going to emphasize on that and talk about it or criticize my speech. I may be very uncomfortable. See, one of the things that the rubric that has been proposed in the speech provides is it provides the norm. These are the 4 aspects on which we are going to evaluate. These are the norms. And if I say this needs to be improved, since people would have listened to the lecture anyway, they will know what does it mean. If somebody has to improve on a certain aspect, what does it mean? That gives them clarity. It is becoming actionable from that point of view. We don't have to elaborate too much on how to go about improving. That part of it they can always investigate themselves. Then, ultimately, this is something that I have shared with Jay also in the past. Reviewing and evaluating a video is a very time-consuming affair. I at least go through some 3 or 4 times I have to run through the video before I can provide a feedback. I just don't do one pass, just watch it once and go and write a feedback. It's very, very difficult to do that. In fact, I split it into multiple groups of factors that I consider together. And in the first run, I may look at the logic, the argument, the evidence, and so on and so forth. The second one, I may look at the structure, the transitions, the repetitions, the conclusions. And then in the third dimension, I may go and look at the voice modulation, how emphasis was done, and how much energy was displayed, all those kind of things. So I do multiple passes to evaluate and give a feedback. I think this kind of investment has to be done. If you do that, then the feedback will be robust. And when you say that, it will not be a big surprise to the person who is receiving. I mean, many times, when we look at a feedback, we have our own self-evaluation of what we have done. And we get all kind of vague feedbacks from, people who have evaluated. So that becomes, very confusing. We really don't understand. So if people really invest in doing this multiple times, do multiple passes, it will give them a much more robust viewpoint. So that's one thing. And finally, all is well that ends well. The video that we talked about mentioned that feedback is a gift. Okay, so we have to give feedback as a gift, and we have to make a good choice of it, and with compassion. So this is what I would like to say to conclude this talk. Now I throw it open to others again. I mean, Jay and Julie. Welcome, Lathesh. I mean, we just completed one speech, and
yeah, that was hi Lathesh. We'll get to you next. So that was very good. One thing I want to key in on what you just said, and this is we're going to find out how good we are at giving feedback when we get to the next segment with Lathesh. So that's going to be our test, whether we're following what we're saying. So Lathesh, you could be the judge whether we are actually living by how we should give good feedback. But one thing, Sowmyan, you said I think is very important that a lot of people that are watching this need to understand that to give a real good feedback is extremely time-consuming, as you just pointed out. That you have to kind of, the way I do it is on the first pass, I do it like if I'm in the audience. Okay, and the point that I would look at, so the first viewing is just like, what would I think of the speech? When I always say, like, a speech to me is 2 things. Did I like it? And what was the main what was the main takeaway? That's the only thing I'll be able to process. Then on the second viewing and the third viewing, I'll look into specifics that could actually make that person improve his public speaking. So everything is based on my first impression, because that's how the audience will view the speech. Not like us, view it 3 or 4 or 5 times, because that's unreasonable. That people in the audience are not going to get a chance to do that. So I think the point you're making is very important there. Julie, you have any final closing thoughts on it before we move to the next segment?
No.
Okay. Okay, so at this point, hey, Lathesh, you want to introduce yourself, and then I'll introduce the second segment.
Sure. Yeah. Hi, Julie. Hi, Jay and Sowmyan. Extremely sorry that I joined in a bit late today. So, Julie, I was there in the discussions last week. So we had a small talk about how to improve my communication skills specific to the speech that I give. I already given one speech on a technical subject on stage gates process. So I got feedback from Sowmyan and Jay on that. Thanks, Sowmyan and Jay. So meanwhile, today's session did not happen. By the way, which was supposed to be there, it didn't happen today. So it will be there after 2 weeks.
Okay.
All right, that's one part. And so, and sorry about that. I forgot to introduce myself. Julie, I'm Lathesh Balakrishnan. I'm based out from Kochi, Kerala. That's in India. I'm based out from India, and I work in the IT industry, the software technology industry, and we got almost 10 years experience working in this field. So yeah, that's a short intro of myself.
Okay, that's good. So I'm going to, at this point, take a brief pause and kick off the second segment, and then I'll hand it off to Julie, who will facilitate the second segment. And the star of the show, of course, is going to be you, Lathesh. So we're going to be asking you quite a few questions. So at this point, I'm going to take a quick pause and then come back and introduce the second segment, okay? And this is so that when I can cut it out as a separate video. Okay, welcome to Speech Talk Live. We're in our second segment where we evaluate a speech that has been given by one of the members. And today we're fortunate to have Lathesh Balakrishnan with us. And Lathesh, thank you for joining us, and you're a very brave person to offer your video for us to use as a way to provide you valuable feedback, and also use it as a way to help others. I mean, that's the whole purpose of this show. There are a lot of people like you who are not as brave, who need help, and I think this will help them quite a bit. So at this point, I'm going to hand it off to Julie Finkelstein, who will facilitate the second segment. Julie, take it over.
Okay, well, thank you. Lathesh, welcome. And I didn't know you were going to be here, so I'm going to start with introducing what your speech is about from my background, from my perspective, and then you can give me feedback on how accurate I am. And then we'll just rotate, and everybody can, including you, Lathesh, will please spend no more than a couple minutes each, and we'll try to do a couple rotations. So Lathesh talked about the staging process, and from what I got out of it, it is a project management and project control technique for a large-scale project. And it came from a history of NASA, and lots of money can put into a project, and then nothing comes out of it. So they took the concept of a life cycle in that there's different stages, and every stage there is a go, no-go decision. And so it forces a certain level of discipline. It's like before you can become, for example, as a human being, when you're a baby, you have to develop those skills. And then when you become a child, because this is a project and it's a human creation, a group of people, very important, smart people, get to sit down and say, well, is this baby ready to become a child? And then do you kill the baby because you need a new baby, or do you move the baby into a child process? So it's a way of controlling money and human effort, and for a group to work together. Lathesh goes on to talk about the characteristics and the process. So at this point, I'm going to turn over to Lathesh, since one of Jay's perspective and what Sowmyan talked about is to be a pull rather than a push process. And that means Lathesh gets to say what kind of feedback he wants or where he wants the focus to be. So I'll give you a couple minutes. Lathesh, please go ahead.
Hello.
You're on.
Am I audible? Yeah. From the feedback perspective, I'm looking at because I already got a couple of points from Sowmyan and Jay about how to categorize my talk. But yeah, because this is a technical subject, so this needs to be categorized. I think the flow needs to be more structured. I need to introduce the concept. Then after introduction the concept, how we have applied into the organization, and after application of this into the organization, what could be the benefits that has already been derived and what is envisaged to be derived. And from there, and after the benefits have been envisaged, it's more about what kind of challenges were faced and then the lessons that were learned from this particular implementation. So that flow, I think, was not there in this presentation at all for what I had given. And yeah, I think that needs to be brought out. That's one thing. Yeah, probably the thought process needs to be a bit more structured in that direction.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to say, Jay, would you like to take a couple minutes and give some initial feedback?
Yeah, no, Lathesh, I don't know, I have questions for you. So this is not like I'm just going to give you my feedback. What is your main objective? Maybe that's the first question to ask, because every speech there has to be an overall objective. What are you trying to accomplish with this speech?
Basically, this particular initiative, the stage gates process, this talk was about giving an overview of how stage gating is done for a project. So that's the main objective, to make the audience understand what is stage gate process and how do we implement it for a project.
So the audience, okay, so that might be another question. What do you know about the audience, and what is their overall knowledge of this particular topic? Are they, first of all, who is the audience, and what do you know about their overall, what do they know about stage gates?
It is assumed that they don't know anything about stage gates. So from that angle, this was supposed to be talked in that sense. I need to have almost that kind of a scene wherein like the audience is not having any clue about this particular topic. So I'm just introducing the topic, giving a background, and then bringing up to a level wherein they're able to understand what this process is all about.
So basically, like us, we're the audience then. We don't know that much about stage gates.
Yes.
Yeah, Sowmyan, go ahead, take it over.
Yeah, Lathesh, I had in my feedback to you, I had made some assumptions, saying that probably your organization is about to introduce this as a process, and there is a top management buy-in. And since you are a person with well versed with this process, you have been chosen to spearhead this initiative to introduce this as a new process within your organization. Is that a right assumption? That is an assumption I made.
Yes, I mean from the the talk that I gave for which I got the reviews, that was only from stage gating. I mean introducing the concept, but the actual talk which I'm having at my organization, for that the audience, you are assuming it correctly, that is going to be stakeholders who are already in the system and who knows the processes. Yeah, that meeting hasn't happened yet, but for that the audience would be different. The objectives are different there, because we are going to take the best practices out from this and then implement into different other programs. So yeah, you are right, Sowmyan, in that assumption.
Yeah. So looking at it a little more from the point of view of the course that we with which we are associated, the public speaking course. Is this is going to be then an informative speech? It is not so much a persuasive speech, your top management buy-in is already there, and there is a blessing from the top management. It's more of you're not really now trying to go and sell it to the rest of the organization. You are now trying to inform the rest of the organization to what the whole thing is about. So it's an informative speech. Am I right?
Yes.
Okay. Fine.
Okay. So Lathesh, thank you so much. And the question is, you mentioned that the audience has, I think the idea of doing a question is great, so I'm going to ask a couple of questions too. One is, are you limited to the time you have for the speech, or can you give more time in your real presentation?
No, it is limited to 1 hour.
1 hour, okay.
Yes.
Great.
That he made to us, we said, please leave out all the technicalities which you may be elaborating to your colleagues, but just give us one overview. So we wanted
I see.
And not give the full speech. That's the context.
Okay, so that helped a lot. And the second thing is, it sounds like your audience understands the system development life cycle or not?
Yes, they do.
Okay, so your purpose is to introduce the stage process on top of that. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Great. So, do you have any more questions for us before I'm going to ask everybody to give you some feedback for a minute or so? So, why don't we do this? Why don't you take a minute and evaluate your own speech, how you think you did? And I'll just do like this for 1 minute each up. Can you give yourself a quick yourself? 1 point. How do you think you did?
I think I was kind of average, I would say. So I need to bring out the ideas a bit more diligently, and also I needed to use the right jargons which were missing. The structure of the discussion wasn't very clear, and it wasn't coming out properly. So that's another area where I need to work on. And giving live examples, probably real-time examples that gets the interest of the audience. So that part is also missed out from my talk.
Okay, great, thanks. Jay, do you want to give a 1 minute feedback?
Yeah, so Lathesh, I don't know, one of the things I think is that you did not practice before you recorded that. So I'm assuming that, okay, because that became apparent to me. I don't know whether that's correct or not. If you did that 10 times, then we have another issue here. So I think practice is definitely going to make a difference. And I think one thing I should tell you is that by just recording it, your next speech is going to be much better. Okay, so I'll just tell you right now.
Yes.
Just by recording it, it's time consuming, but your next speech is going to be a lot better. The other thing I'll point out is that what I noticed from the speech that I think you don't want to lose is you showed a lot of enthusiasm about this particular topic. Okay, like I could really sense it that you really want to explain it. So don't do anything with that. That's fine. I think once you put the proper organization and follow that, and like there's better structure. The structure is going to drive this speech because you have a pretty much an idea on how to flow this speech. And once you get that structure down, then you have to work on the interest part. Like how do you make the speech more interesting? So one of the comments that I think I made was let the people know right up front what is the key takeaway for this speech. Like why is StageGate so important? And I know it sounds like don't make an assumption like people know that. Because StageGate is a very important process. It has to do with making sure that the projects are indeed successful, right? So you have to keep emphasizing your main point over and over and over again till but if they're at the end of the speech, if somebody asks them, what did you get out of the speech? That main takeaway is what they should say. If they're not saying that, then your speech failed, okay? So that's my overall comment on that.
Great, thank you.
Sure.
Sowmyan?
Thank you.
Yeah. In fact, I had given this feedback to Lathesh earlier. What I find is that Lathesh is in a position of strength. He is the person who knows about this process most in his organization. He has got a good familiarity with this, and he is introducing a new initiative in our organization. And I think these kind of events, where we take responsibility for introducing a system in a new organization is a very, very fulfilling kind of experience by itself. So he is very lucky to be in that kind of position. I think it's a nice position to be in. He has made a very informative speech about this, and the information point of view was very much there. The only emphasis I was making to him was, since this is an informative speech, I always try to look at the ethos perspective. He should, I mean, in his presentation to us, he may not have emphasized this, but maybe even though his colleagues in the organization may know about him, he should say what was his personal experience with this particular system. You should also mention about the system's global acceptance and its position in terms of CMM standards and endorsing this kind of a process. So the ethos, that is credibility of the person who is explaining, saying I have got experience in this, and that this system is a standardized system, it's a global best practice. Those kind of preambles and things like that will be important to position this as something that everybody has to take seriously. Okay, so that's the emphasis I was trying to make. It is all about ethos that I was emphasizing. That's all I have to say. I think it's perhaps that we just asked him to give only a brief 15-minute thing to us, and whereas he is going to give a 1-hour presentation to others. So we may not be able to assess what he left out and things like that. So that would be unfair. I was only trying to put an emphasis to this. That's all.
Thanks, Sowmyan. Okay, so I will take a couple minutes. So Lathesh, since I didn't have the privilege of last week, I would say that first of all, you were very, very clear. Your body language, your enthusiasm, I will even use the word charisma, came across very clearly. And in just listening to you, I can see that you have really great organization. So to kind of give you a little bit of a constructive criticism, in terms of structure, I like the sandwich technique in terms of tell them what you're going to tell them, which is, hey, I'm telling you this, it's important because, and then tell them all the details, and then tell them what you told them. This was important. Not only can you save a lot of money, it creates group consensus and group collaboration. It's an opportunity for us to save a lot of money and be successful at projects, something like that. And so that's the kind of structure I would recommend. In addition, in listening, I have an IT background. In addition, I think if you can separate the system development lifecycle and the program implementation, that will really help. So I would suggest that you build the whole thing on a system lifecycle, the different phases, iterate the phases very clearly, identify activities to be checklists, and you can even do a matrix chart on it, and then go back and add the program piece, saying that the program piece makes this step even more complex, and then the actionable part is, here is what we can do. The next meeting, we'll go through the first stage of the life cycle. These are the checklists I recommended. Let's review the checklist. And so set up at the next meeting to go through a group consensus so you can drive the process forward. So that was my 2 minutes. I'll give you a couple minutes to kind of say how you like the feedback, and I'll wrap up. Do you have anything to say, Lathesh?
I think what you mentioned and what Sowmyan and Jay mentioned is definitely something that I need to incorporate. Thanks a lot for those feedback and suggestions. Definitely, I think those needs to be there in an informative speech, because that's what arouses the audience, and that's what makes the audience feel, why is it that they need to listen to me? What is in that part of what is in it for me comes out properly if it is structured that way. Thanks a lot, everyone.
Great. Okay, well, thank you. I think that hopefully everybody watching this will take something out of it. And thank you, Lathesh, for being so generous and I hope you enjoyed it too. And I'll turn this back over to
definitely.
Great. So I'll turn this back over to Jay.
Yeah, Julie, thank you very much. And again, for those who are watching this, I have provided, Lathesh has given us permission to use his video recording. So if anybody's watching this and you're wondering, where do I get, I'll provide the link and you can view Lathesh's speech. And again, the purpose of it is not, Lathesh has given us an opportunity to view this because these are the kind of real life talks that people give. And some of the talks that you see at the Coursera are not the kind of talks you actually will give to in a business environment. So Lathesh, your talk actually is very valuable. Your talk is something that people can actually use at work because these are the kind of talks that they want to give. So actually, I want to thank you for sharing your video with us. I think it's going to help a lot of people. So at this point, I am going to take a brief pause and introduce the third segment, and I'll facilitate that. Okay, so we're now moving to our third segment for Speech Talk Live episode 3, and this segment we use to review a professional speaker and one of the speeches that they have given and see what we can learn from it and how they actually communicate their content and in the way they do it. So today I came across this speech that was given by John Cleese. For those who may not know who John Cleese is a British actor, comedian, writer, producer. He's the co-founder of the Monty Python troupe, I think in the late 60s, and he has also starred in a very popular show in Britain called Fawlty Towers, and he's made numerous movies. The one that I think many of you might be familiar with is called Fish Called Wanda, I believe, and also quite a few of those Monty Python, Holy Grail, and other movies. So John Cleese is a creative artist. He's an actor. And the speech he gives is a very interesting speech. He gives it on not about acting, but it's about creativity. And what is so interesting about this speech is that it's a pretty complicated speech, but he simplifies it to the point where he doesn't bring in a lot of neuroscience and all of this other jargon. And he explains it in a way that anybody can get a lot out of it. Anybody can watch that and say, wow, I think I now understand what creativity is. And one of the interesting things, he starts off in the beginning of the speech is he's saying creativity is kind of hard to define. So he kind of sets the level expectation that I'm not sure, even though I am a creative artist, but I'm not sure I'm the right person who can really explain it. And then he goes on to give his view on what creativity is based on his experience. And I'll just kind of give you an overview for those who have not seen the video. And there's a lot. This is a 35-minute video, I believe. So there's a lot that he covers here. And his main point is that creativity requires two modes of work. And he defines this as an open mode, which is like a playful mode, where you're curious, where you don't have a lot of stress or pressure. It's like a free-flowing childlike, let's call it. And then there is this closed mode where you now have to go and implement what you have pondered in an open mode. And he's basically, what he's saying is that this idea is how creativity works. So let's take at like what we're doing here on this Speech Talk Live. Maybe we are creative, since we are creating something here where we are in an open mode where when we are on our own, and then when we are on this show, it's a closed mode where we have to now implement what we've been thinking about. So I'm kind of drawing the analogy of what he's talking about into what we're doing. There's an open mode when we are on our own thinking about, like what Sowmyan did on his topic on feedback. And then once he's on this show, he's in a closed mode where now he has to deliver what he's been thinking about. And that's what he's talking about, these two modes, open and closed mode. And then he goes into, and another interesting thing is the way he delivers the speech is very clever. He keeps interjecting these light bulb jokes. And in the beginning, I was like, why is he doing that? And then it occurred to me, and I'm not sure I got it on the first viewing, so I have to be honest on this. What he's really showing is that this is how it works, open and closed. His speech is essentially a closed mode speech. But then he goes into this open mode where he's injecting this light bulb jokes, like repeatedly throughout. He sprinkles it throughout his talk, right, his speech. And I think that's what he's trying to communicate, and I'd like to get your feedback on if that's how you interpreted that how open and closed mode works. So his speech essentially is what he's talking about. And then I'll sum it up with the 5 things that he talks about, like how open mode really works. And here he says the 5 attributes of it is, to be in open mode, you need space. You need to kind of get away from, like, you can take a long walk or maybe jogging or doing something where you are just letting your mind kind of in a free-flowing mode where you can ponder about a particular subject. So that's space. Then the second one is time. Now time, he uses time twice, 2 attributes of time. The first one is you got to pick a day, like, okay, I'm going to go for my morning walk at 8 o'clock. So you know that time is now reserved for you to do your deep thinking or playfulness or whatever, curiosity, where you're just devoting that time for that, for open mode thinking. Then he also uses the third attribute is, again, time. Now this one is a very interesting one. And what he says is that people who are in open mode, who are creative, will end up spending more time than somebody who's not creative. And that makes a difference. I would define the second time as time plus 1. So if I'm devoting, let's say, 20 minutes, but if I'm really creative, I'll end up spending even more time and stick to it. That stick-to-itiveness is what I think he's talking about. The fourth attribute is, of course, confidence. And what he's saying here is what we hear all the time from Silicon Valley, that you cannot have fear of failing. And that's what he's talking about. You have to have confidence, because if you don't, if you're scared, then you're not going to be creative. And then the last one is humor. And I think that's pretty important. And he's a funny guy, so this speech really is he's hitting the mark right here. He's a comedian, and he's saying that in order to be creative, if you can't see a humor in it, then it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard to be creative. So these are the things that I got. So I thought this was an excellent speech. It's one of those speeches, if you ask me, I don't think I could deliver it. I think this requires a special talent to deliver this kind of speech, because I don't think it takes a lot of risks in this speech where he injects a lot of these light bulb jokes, and I thought it was one of the best speeches that I've seen in a very long time. So I'd like to get your feedback, Sowmyan, Julie, and Lathesh. What do you think of it? Sowmyan, you want to start?
Julie can go now.
Oh, Julie, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. Hi, everybody, again. Yeah, I really want to focus on this idea of open and closed attention. And it's very interesting because what you talk about is the speech itself is a demonstration of closed and open. And another word I will use is structured and free form. And that there's a time for structured process and there's time for free form. And he also mentioned the psychologist Edward de Bono, who does a lot of creativity stuff. In my own experience, when you do meditation, you can do it both as an open meditation and a closed meditation. And so and there's a physiology that's associated with that. So when you do open meditation, one of the things you can do is just bring your eyes open and defocus as if though you're looking at the horizon. The way to do a closed meditation is you can concentrate on your breath and just bring it back to your breath and keep your eyes relaxed. So those are the things I found very, very interesting in his speech. I really like his use of humor, and I think I'm going to have to practice that. So you might hear me telling silly jokes in the speech. So thank you.
Yeah. So there are. I also like this speech very much. Thank you, Jay, for giving a link to such a interesting video. Well, I mean, you already covered a lot of them, and there are three aspects which I wanted to touch upon. One is I like the way he was talking about creativity being a ability and not really a talent. He was trying to put it with some words like that. Then he said it is more like playfulness. Children play, and when children play, they don't have any target, time, pressure, something to be achieved within a certain time, etc. It's all absolutely open-ended. Okay, so you're just going to play for that 1 hour, 1.5 hours, and then come back home, and then you leave the play there, and you come back, and then you engage in your serious work or whatever it is, do homework or whatever at home. But then when you're out playing, you just enjoy that with no goals and things like that. And this playfulness is also something that he says is something where you do a lot of experimentation. Okay, so that dimension was very interesting. He says just leave it to your subconscious, it will keep working. And that's where I think the confidence that he is trying to bring in also is apparently linked to this. In the sense, we may get anxious, saying, "Oh God, I mean, by tomorrow 10 o'clock, I have to come up with a creative solution." Okay, I think John will go ahead and say, "Okay, 10 o'clock, I'll come up with whatever creative solution I have," and then go about doing his various playful things. Whereas, we may get into anxiety. Hey, I mean, 4 hours have passed since still I have not got anything. He doesn't seem to subscribe to such a thing at all. He just says, keep focusing on this till 10 o'clock. You've got time. Forget about everything else. Keep doing your creative thinking till that 10 o'clock. No, so the idea seems to be at 10 o'clock when the deadline is passed, you just bring up whatever is the most creative solution that you have thought of so far and not worry about performance, etc. And if you have gone through this process and you have enjoyed it, you would have definitely got a very creative solution. So that's the way he's emphasizing. In fact, he's comparing with another colleague at Monty Python who perhaps was picking up the first solution that came to him, he would apparently pick up, whereas he says, I personally would spend all the time that I am entitled to, and I will never rush to take a decision, till that last minute is over. And then only I'll come up with my solution. I fully use all the time available to me. So that kind of a thing. Second thing I found was, he was, it was a very humorous speech. He had a lot of jokes there. The transcript also is available. In fact, the transcript was something that I had to go through. I normally have a difficulty in following people with a foreign accent. So I had to go through the transcript. I enjoyed it all the more when I read through the transcript. And, all these light bulb jokes aside, I felt that, he was, practically every sentence was some kind of sarcastic thing or satirical sentence. And then he was saying all of them without even smiling. For somebody who is known to be a comedian or who is a humorist, to go through a 35 minutes presentation without smiling, that is something amazing for me. I was sort of amused. Then he used sarcasm. He finally, he closed it with some 3 points: how to kill creativity among youngsters in your organization. Of course, this definitely a way of presenting. You should, whatever is being suggested for killing creativity is something that you should not do, is the actual message. But you are saying, yeah, let us go and do this. Let's not allow these guys to have any humor, forbid humor. Okay, then exercise your authority and push them for schedules. Don't allow them any free time. And then he said, if they are apparently wasting their time, accuse them of being lazy and being not sincere. Demand urgency, all that kind of stuff. I think it's very classic. Is the whole style of his was very engaging. We may perhaps drift away if it is not for this kind of humor that he was weaving all through. He may drift away from a serious subject like this. He definitely kept our attention all the way through. Okay, except for my inability to follow accent sometimes for which I backed the transcript. I was absolutely captivated by his talk all the way through. That's my feedback.
Lathesh, did you get a chance to view that video?
I'm sorry, Jay. Actually, I was sincere. I couldn't get time to do that. I'm extremely sorry about that.
That's okay. That's okay. When you get a chance, watch it. It's an excellent video. You'll learn a lot from that. One thing I'll mention, what Sowmyan just said at the end. That's another interesting thing that I noticed that he does. If you notice that I think he goes and tells you like how to stop your subordinates from being creative. And that's also very interesting what he does there. Here he spends almost like 33 minutes defining creativity. So he's showing like how difficult it is to be creative and explaining creativity. But to kill creativity, it doesn't take that much time to do that. You know, you can do it so quickly to blunt creativity. And he doesn't even give any examples or anything. It's just like to creativity, hey, do it my way, and that's it. You don't need to provide any examples. But to explain creativity, he gives so many examples of Alfred Hitchcock and Alexander Fleming. But at the end, when he's talking about how to blunt creativity, there are no examples. It's like, stop this. You just, tell people, don't be funny, don't do this, don't do that, and that's it. And you'll stop people being creative. I thought that was pretty creative in the way he did that. So, any closing thoughts on it? I think there's a lot to learn here. And I think one thing I'll point out is, I think humor is something we need to cover, because I think people sometimes mistake humor from telling jokes. I don't think he really, because remember who this is coming from. This is John Cleese, so people do expect him to be funny, right? But if you're not somebody who's funny, then it's probably better to avoid telling jokes. That doesn't mean you can't be humorous. The bar is you want to make people smile, but you don't want to get to the point where they're laughing loud, because then you're kind of getting to the point where you're crossing the edge. So humor is a very tricky thing. Most people can't do it well. Even I can't pull it off either. If I'm naturally funny, that's one thing. So my goal is, if you're smiling, then that's good. But if you're like going totally like, yeah, oh, what a joke, then that's not good. Then I think I've gone over the top. So that's not the intention. Otherwise, people stop taking you seriously. So anyway, Julie, I think you're funny as you are, Julie. I don't think you need to tell any jokes. Just tell us about your moving adventures, and those basically will get the crowd going. Okay, so at this point, I think we've covered this, unless anybody has any last thing to add to this speech. Otherwise, we'll just go around with closing thoughts and then wrap it up. So I will start with Julie. Julie, any closing thoughts, parting thoughts?
Yes, I think today was very successful and energetic. And Lathesh, you did a great job. And if you would like any more feedback, please just feel free to contact Jay, and Jay has my email address. And thank you, Sowmyan. It was always good to hear what you have to say, and thanks, Jay. I know you've done so much work on it. I really appreciate it.
Lathesh? Is it Lathesh or Lathesh? Are we pronouncing your name incorrect? Is it Lathesh or Lathesh?
No, it is Lathesh. You are right. It is Lathesh.
Okay, Lathesh, okay.
Yeah, for me, I think the last two sessions have been wonderful, and it has really helped me a lot to improve upon the way I communicate during the speech and how I'm able to articulate stuff. So, feedback given by Sowmyan, Jay, and today Julie is definitely very helpful for me to develop more the skills. Thank you very much.
Lathesh, you can, every Friday we have this at 7 o'clock in the evening, and you are welcome to join at any time. The three of us as mentors, we make it a point to be possibly there, whether other people join or not, because we have now designed it in such a way that we are going to split it into smaller modules and post it. It can be seen by people at any other time. We are not really, looking at people participating as a basic minimum requirement. We have structured it in such a way that we can still deliver the value offline. Okay, but you are always welcome to participate. Okay, participation has got its own charm and enthusiasm and interest. It will be fun. Yeah, you are welcome.
Sure, sure. Thank you.
Yeah, the only thing I'll say is because we like to limit it to 5 since we have a lot of interactivity. And I was on a call yesterday, a Coursera call, and they had a lot of people on, and it just doesn't work when you have too many people on. For example, for what we're trying to do here, because we need people to participate, but also to be prepared so that they can participate actively. Otherwise, there's no point in being on this without actually adding more to, because some of these things, there's a lot of homework that needs to be done. So if you want to participate, you're welcome to participate, but let us know, because we want to limit it to no more than 5, because it just doesn't work if you have more than 5, okay? And so at this point, let me thank Lathesh. One thing I will mention is the speech that if you're ever going to give, one thing I would recommend you do is if you can send us your outline on how you're organizing it, we can provide feedback. I think that feedback will be very valuable, because if you got that organization, then I think the rest of it, you can do it. You already have all the content there. The organization is the key there, okay? So if you have that, and if you want our feedback, just send it to us, and we'll give you feedback on that. So at this point, let me thank Julie. Julie, thank you very much for joining us and facilitating the evaluation segment. Lathesh, for volunteering to use your video for the evaluation of a member. And Sowmyan, excellent segment on how to give valuable feedback. And next week, I think, Sowmyan, you're going to do the how to receive feedback, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I think we're set, and I'll send you the speech that we can look at. I think the one I'm thinking of is the one by Steven Spielberg on how to tell a story. So I will take a look at it, and if it looks like it's something, then I'll send that, and you guys can tell me what you think, okay? And Julie, as far as the second segment, Penny Liu, I think, is somebody that you're working with. She has sent a recording, but it was private, so I told her to make it unlisted. And I think she's going to be on as it's an impromptu speech, and you can facilitate that session on evaluating that speech, okay? Okay, so at this point, thank you, everybody, and I'm going to close it out. Okay, guys, bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.